Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. President Trump rallying in Wheeling, West Virginia over the weekend, Saturday night. He addressed the Kavanaugh matter to the throngs of Trump supporters.
A vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh is a vote to confirm one of the most accomplished legal minds of our time, a jurist with a sterling record of public service.
So he's not backing down, and even though he green-lighted the up to 1 week extension for the FBI to look into the allegations made against Kavanaugh, he also, despite howling from the Democrats, reiterated that there were no parameters, that the FBI has free rein to investigate as they see fit. He also took a shot at Democrats, did President Trump, in no uncertain terms about the Kavanaugh matter.
Honestly, the Democrats are a disgrace. They are. They're a disgrace. And the number one enabler of the Democrats is the fake news media right back there. Tell you.
So certainly he mentioned in West Virginia the polling on this, like 58-28 in terms of supporting the Kavanaugh confirmation. So it puts Joe Manchin in a bit of a trick bag, which is why there were reports out before Friday's deferral to that Manchin was a yes vote.
Really?
When it got to the floor. So we'll see on that, but now we have to tackle the FBI probe and what that might look like and how that might go. And
who's been interviewed and who has yet to be interviewed.
Yeah, I think people are very curious about the nature of the scope of the interview.
Exactly. Well, we did learn over the weekend that Swetnick will not be getting interviewed. She's the one who's represented by Michael Evanetti, who lied on her job application, said she was a biology major from Johns Hopkins University. Never happened, among other things.
Yeah, I mean, but there's a lot of there's a lot of moving parts here. You also have the Senate referring a false Kavanaugh accuser for prosecution. This is the boat on Rhode Island, that guy.
Yeah, that never happened. The docked boat where he and his friend allegedly gang raped someone, which was all just crazy talk.
So that's being referred for prosecution.
But nobody's heard
Tom Cotton wants Feinstein investigated over the leak letter. Bill Cassidy wants the FBI to probe Dems' collusion to smear Kavanaugh. And, of course, the Democrats will not only want all the accusers interviewed and their stories checked out, they also want to get into new avenues of investigation into Kavanaugh, like, for example, his drinking during college and whether or not he ever drank to the excess such that he blacked out.
For more, they just want to see if he perjured himself.
For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Ron Hosko, who's a former FBI Assistant Director, President of the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund. Ron, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning. You guys going to cue the music for the circus?
Yeah, well, it should. So how does the FBI... There it is.
There it is.
Yeah, instant request from Ron Hosko. So where does the FBI play in the circus?
Well, the FBI in this sort of case, we have to keep in mind this is neither a typical FBI criminal investigation nor is it a national security investigation. So the same tools that would be in their possession during that type of work are not there here. This is a background investigation. It's run by the FBI's security division. The FBI is, in effect, a service provider for a client, and that client here and with all nominees is the White House. Typically, the background investigation starts with what's known as an SF-86. It's a lengthy form, even when it's blank, that asks questions about where you've lived, where you've worked, questions about your finances. That's the starting point typically for one of these investigations. With Mr. Kavanaugh, as you've already heard, he's already had, I think, either 5 or 6 of these investigations. And you may know, maybe you don't, that the FBI would typically start from the last background investigation and move forward. So I heard, kind of a misinformed comment by a host the other night.
Imagine that.
Said, the FBI did, miss this. They should have. Well, the FBI, if with somebody who's, I think, 53 years old and 5 or 6 prior backgrounds that presumably were clean because he's been in a position, an important position, for all that time, they're not going back beyond those to start at high school or start at start at high school and then go to middle school or grade school. they're going forward. They want to know in the most recent one, what's changed? What's new? Did you change your place of work? Are you living in a new place? Do you have new police contacts to report? And they're probing that. But they're doing it within certain parameters, typical parameters, character references, associations, financial. And now we have an accuser, or in fact multiple accusers, that do go back to high school. And so this is way different than what the FBI is normally expected to do, but they're capable of doing that which the client asks for.
Well, maybe the
White House.
Maybe they could just farm it out to Fusion GPS.
Oh, yeah. Well, since there's no physical evidence besides this calendar that Brett Kavanaugh saved from 1982, what are they going to do? I mean, it's a he said, she said situation, correct?
Yeah, I think in large measure it is, but I think they should commit themselves to as detailed an interview of Ms. Ford as she would allow, to see is, perhaps they ask the right question and there's some additional tidbit that she can offer that they could test, that goes to the validity, the credibility of her claims. And I think they would do just that. They would probe this and try to get as detailed information as possible to see if that possibility exists. Go back to Judge Kavanaugh, and potentially with additional questions. It sounds as though they are at least going to interview this other person, Ms. Ramirez, I think it is, or they have already, to try to look for something that is, corroborates in any way their claims, where they with somebody that they told at the time, how did they get there? How did they return? What did they say? What did they do? Something that is tangible. This is very, very difficult. It's 36 years ago. We weren't all using cell phones. We weren't all texting each other or putting all of our activity on Facebook or some other social media. So, a calendar back then was probably state of the art. Mm-hmm. That may be the best that we have right now to say, look, there's some support for this, or there is no additional support. And then it goes back to the Senate, I think most of whom have already indicated what their intentions are, for the undecideds to say, I have something substantive that I can hang my vote on. It's up to them, the burden of proof required in a confirmation hearing to say, and the burden of proof could be, well, that guy's nominated by Trump. I'm a Democrat. I'm not voting for him. So
some
of them are already convinced.
So Joe Biden's comments from 1991, the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearing about the FBI, that have been much bandied about, including by us on this show, are in fact correct, that the FBI doesn't reach conclusions. They provide information, and it's the Senate's job to reach a conclusion based on the information they provided. So so what are you going to get? You're going to get another interview of Mark Judge. He sticks to the statement he's submitted previously under penalty of felony, or he recants. And then if he recants, then you've got Mark Judge versus Mark Judge. How many character witnesses are you going to go to? If you start interviewing character witnesses that back up Ford's testimony, then you got 150 women to interview that have had press conferences on behalf of Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, that seems to me there's potentially no limit in scope here, and so I don't know how the FBI limits it and passes the kind of this was handled fairly test from both sides.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that the FBI, the scope of it is going to be limited by the White House counsel's office. The Senator Grassley and company and the White House are carefully considering what they're asking the FBI to do. And the FBI would move quickly, but this is going to be circumscribed by politicians, and the end result is very likely to be, based on politics, not based on proof, because of exactly what you're talking about. He said, she said, she's my friend, he's my friend. I don't know anything that supports or refutes. It could very well be we're left in very much the same position, which is politicians bickering and battling.
What do you do when you have a person such as Mark Judge, who is admitted, has written a book about his addictions and about blacking out and about being, addicted to drugs? Is he even a credible witness? Well,
that's exactly the right question. It goes to credibility. Does does he have a recall of any of the significant events? And is that recall credible, or is it just bits and pieces? Frankly, the same question goes to Ms. Ford. Mm-hmm. How credible is it? How in what detail can she define what happened? How long did this encounter last? How many beers or other drinks or any other illegal substances did she take before that might have clouded her memory, might have changed her memory? Well, those are all relevant questions. Look, I'm confident that Ms. Ford is a victim. I feel sorry for her, but her recollection ought to be tested as well to make sure that she is clear and firm in what she says happened, what she alleges. But that doesn't mean just the FBI just writing a blank check or saying, okay, we'll take you at your word. We'll test everybody else.
Yeah, and so so what was your assessment of Rachel Mitchell's job, the job that she did last week in trying to essentially test Miss Ford's testimony, Miss Ford's memory, and get her to answer some specific questions on the specific details?
I think it was. I heard it. I didn't as much see it. I was actually in the car. I thought it was okay, but it was not just a kind of a running narrative. Look, this was with millions of eyes watching. The optics of even Ms. Mitchell as the interlocutor asking the questions for the group of Republicans. There are optics issues. There are care and concern for the victim issues that were all playing out last week. I'm not sure that any or all of those processes are really focused on getting the facts, and the facts may be very difficult to get at after 36 years with anybody's memory. Yeah. So it's a delicate situation. I thought the optics were certainly better than having 7 or 10 old white Republican men asking these questions.
Oh, no, I know. White Republican men.
They could with that.
Yeah, white Republican men should not be allowed to ask questions in this country. There's no question about that.
Well, they should, but the optics of it, they know what the optics of that are.
Yeah, I understand.
And
I understand. I hear what you're saying. Ron Hosko, former FBI Assistant Director, President of the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund. Ron, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer.